experts on today's critical issues, and for each of these issues, there's a common side story, and the story is that of political money. Money spent on political campaigns and lobbying pollutes policy setting, making it all but impossible for the laws emerging from the sausage-making machine to be in the best public interest. Let's face it, political money is nothing new, but the scales were tipped in favor of moneyed interest when 2 years ago today, the U.S. Supreme Court allowed unregulated and unlimited outside money to flow into elections. For corporations wishing to game the system, the money doesn't even have to be disclosed. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Maybe this stuff, maybe I'm good enough. An expert involved in trying to shape the climate change policy debate had this to say: is it really possible that people in Washington don't understand what the rest of the country, left, right, and center, believes about them? They take campaign money from corporations in return for doing their bidding. And please understand that more than 75% of citizens polled do not believe that corporations should have people rights, and full 2/3 of small businesses in this country are concerned that big business is calling all the shots. I'm going to just delve a little bit into each of the areas that we've discussed today. So regarding Nicole's uphill battle at fair health care policy, healthcare industry dollars provide a glaring example of too much money polluting the political process. Insurance and other health industry firms do not make campaign contributions out of the goodness of their heart. Democracy North Carolina helped uncover an egregious attempt by Blue Cross and Blue Shield to buy policy just this year. Here's the story. Blue Cross Blue Shield is often criticized for being a so-called not-for-profit and enjoying the special tax treatment that nonprofits enjoy, while also raking in tons of profits and paying their CEO $4 million. Their investment into policy is nothing new, but they stepped it up around the national health care policy debate. It's a fox in the henhouse story in which Blue Cross invests heavily in the campaigns of 2 legislators who then introduce the legislation that Nicole described, giving them the power to call the shots on the new health care benefit exchange. Every state will have to have one of these health care benefit exchanges. They're designed to help small businesses and individuals have access to bigger plans, and also to help individuals choose the correct plan for them. So naturally, consumer advocates want a broad representation on the boards and open meetings, but Blue Cross Blue Shield wants to call the shots. So for $44,000 to 2 sponsors, they got the bill through the House. It's dead in the Senate, as I understand it, from Nicole, but it can come back up. So this is going to be one to watch. It was called House Bill 115. And there are federal level examples too. More than $5 million going to North Carolina's congressional reps and the 2 U.S. senators. The largest amount from this industry, and it was over 3 election cycles from 2003 to 2008. More than $1.5 million to Richard Burr, and more than $500,000 to Representative Sue Myron. The absolute highest recipient in 2009, Patty Murray, a congressman from Washington State, received in 1 year what Richard Burr received in 3 different cycles. And she was critical because she was among the group of Democrats who were threatening to oppose the bill until insurance money kept giving her money, giving her money, giving her money, and thus we have a weakened bill. She was critical because she was on the health, appropriations, and the budget committees. So she was the absolute top recipient. Similarly, in Jim's issue, it's really nothing short of amazing that N.C. Warren and his colleagues and other organizations working in coalition with him have been able to hold the utilities at bay as well as they had. It really speaks to the organizing power and tenacity of a growing group of people who don't want to sit idly by and watch the planet's destruction. As the Duke and Progress seek the merger heights, they have the money power on their side. They spent $4 million in state-level races in those 3 election cycles, $19 million in an additional $19 million in federal campaigns, and in state and federal lobbying. The broader oil and gas industry, $23 million in congressional campaigns from 2008 alone. The top 3 recipients, it's no wonder that they all receive a 0 in the League of Conservation Voters scorecard. And it's just not by chance. And similarly with Susan's issue, the banks and lending, in a particularly telling though not unusual example of political money in politics, it's the one she talked about. Here are the numbers. It was slightly, these lending packs had collected slightly more than $20,000 in 2010, and the year they stepped it up, they raised almost more than $170,000 to ask for this 100% interest rate. Outrageous. When I was preparing my notes, I understood the number to be 36%, and I was like already flabbergasted at that. Actually happened, so don't anybody follow my notes because they still say 36%. It's interesting that North Carolina's own Bank of America is the top corporate target of common calls as we figure out how to fight back against the Citizens United ruling and who you're going to hold up as the poster child. The bank is being targeted for trying to increase fees, that was well publicized, and also for the mortgage fraud, which it has already agreed to pay $335 million to settle allegations of racial discriminations in loans it made, and loans Countrywide made, and B of A has since acquired Countrywide. They have North Carolina's largest political action committee, and incidentally, if Blue Cross, if Duke and Progress were allowed to merge, they would surpass the size of the Bank of America Political Action Committee. But almost $400,000 in the 2009-2010 election cycle at state level giving, an additional almost $250,000 on lobbying. And at the federal level, $10 million on lobbying, $10 million on campaign contributions, and $10 million CEO compensation. So it's sort of like what I think Jim was saying. How in the world, don't tell me you need more money. Don't tell me you need to raise fees. Quit this nonsense. And what does a bank teller make? Less than $12 a month.
Pays more taxes.
And pays more taxes.
Right. We're at a real crossroads. Our democracy is at stake, but more and more people, from the Tea Party to the Occupy movement, are waking up to the ill effects of excessive political money in our elections and policy making. It will take a lot of people to effectively counter the entrenched money power. There's a lot going on, from action directed directly at corporations. There's some activity in the courts, and then also legislative pressure. So I'm going to just break it down a little bit and talk about each of these. What can we do to direct corporate action? A lot of it needs to be done at the shareholder level, but if you have a retirement plan, you probably have some of this stuff in your portfolio. So I like to think of it like there are carrots you can use, like holding up those companies that do well. Starbucks, for example, has agreed to no political spending in the 2012 election cycle unless some of this stuff is addressed legislatively. So as shareholders, we can ask the companies that we have stock in or that are in our portfolio through our retirement accounts to do the right thing. Write the boards of directors and say, we're watching. It's going to really take that kind of grassroots activity. And then we promote those companies as fair citizens, the ones that are doing well. So the Patagonias, the Starbucks, et cetera, and try to grow more of those companies and support those companies. And then there, of course, the stick side. The Move Your Money campaign after Bank of America's debacle and asking for the debit card fees actually worked pretty well. You saw a lot of people flocking to credit unions. There are credit union options here in Rocky Mount, as well as community banks. So consider moving your money from some of the biggest banks. And Bank of America is by no means the only one. JP, Chase Morgan, and Wells Fargo are right up there with them. You can boycott companies that aren't behaving like you would like them to see. In some cases, but of course we can't very easily boycott Duke unless Duke Energy over in Durham we can anyway. And we can sign petitions to the boards of directors asking for some help there. Judicial. So we're not that likely to get a lot of change unless the Supreme Court changed, because after all, the Citizens United ruling was brought down by the Roberts Court in that 5-4 ruling 2 years ago today. But who do you imagine said this? The U.S. Supreme Court, in what I think is one of the worst decisions in history, struck down campaign finance restrictions. I predicted when they struck down the law that there would be a flood of money, not transparent, unaccounted for, and that's exactly what happened. What is happening? Any guess? This was earlier this month, right after the first of the year. Who said?
Cambridge.
Yeah. So there is a chance. Montana has already said Citizens United is not going to fly in our state. Their Attorney General brought a suit, and their Supreme Court said, no, we're going to stand by our campaign limits. And so that could end up back at the Supreme Court. And with, I mean, there aren't supposed to be activist judges. They're supposed to use precedent. But there could be some activity if the courts catch wind of people being awake to these issues and awake to the Citizens United ruling and all the problems it's caused. I mean, you saw it in Iowa, $3 million last-minute dollars against New Gingrich. The place at which we have the most chance, and which I am asking for your help today, is on legislative activity. So there'll be state level and federal level bills working on several of these different issues. When the Supreme Court sent the ruling down, even the most conservative judges said this needs to be accompanied with very strict disclosure. However, even though disclosure bills were floated in Congress in 2010, the bills did not pass. So we still do not have disclosure laws. Unions do have certain disclosure laws that they have to abide by, but corporations are free and clear. Shareholder protection would allow the boards of corporations to have to sign off on political spending, and also require that corporation, I mean, these could be worded in different ways, but some of the ones floating around, some of the bills floating around, require also that shareholders get to sign off on the overall political budget. They can't sign off on this dollar to this legislator, but they'll sign off on an overall budget, like what percentage of the general treasury are you okay with? These are sort of incremental, piecemeal things. Basically what we need is a constitutional amendment saying corporations are not people and money is not speech. And it is heartening that New York City, Los Angeles, Chapel Hill, and a lot, how do you say that place? There's a list on our website, I'm sorry. A lot of cities are moving toward this, and it's actually something I want to work on in Rocky Mount, is going to the city council, and there's some council members here today. I know one county commissioner, a city council member, thank you, Chris, for being here. Working on resolutions, having city councils across the country pass resolutions saying corporations are not people and money is not speech. So that's what they're working on. And then, for those of you who've known me a long time, public campaign financing. If we ever are able to control the political money, we're going to have some alternative form of financing people's campaigns, and so we're working on public campaign financing. Walter Jones actually is part of a bill that does both the constitutional amendment and the public campaign financing. So as we learn more about the legislation and which ones have the chances of moving, we'll need to get co-sponsors on that Jones bill. There's a Bernie Sanders Senate bill, so we can have Kay Hagan meeting here in Nash County and try to get her to be a co-sponsor on that. And these are all things that I look forward to working on in 2012, and I'm going to need your help.